Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran. And on this episode, we're going to discuss changes of possession. But before we get going on that topic, we're going to go back to our play from our last episode. We have 3:23 left in the second quarter. A's ball, 2nd and 10 from the B43. The game clock is stopped after an incomplete pass. The play clock hits 0. B sounds his whistle and throws a flag. At or just before the same time, the line of scrimmage official on the sideline is sounding their whistle because A's coach called a timeout. And we want to know how you all handle this. So whether we're in high school or college or where we're at in the game, at this point, we're going to give them the timeout. We've talked about this a couple of different times on our previous episodes. We don't want to be too technical in this scenario, and we want to try to use some of our preventing officiating skills to avoid calling any unnecessary fouls. Here, if they yell for the timeout right as the play clock is hitting 0, we want to go ahead and afford them that timeout. You're probably going to get some complaints from the opposing coach, but unfortunately, it's kind of part of our job. And one of the things we can always say is, Coach, we would give you the same opportunity. Ryan, anything you want to add on this?
Yeah, the only thing I can correct you is that instead of you may, you will definitely get some complaints from the opposing coach. Regardless, they will always yell for the delay of game. However, it's often that situation where everybody in the stadium can hear that coach on the opposite sideline yelling for the timeout. And you also have to think through the logical thing as well, right? Just because the play clock hits 0 doesn't mean we have a delay of game. It's the whole process of looking where the ball is and looking back at the clock when it hits 0. So 0 isn't necessarily an automatic line in the sand delay of game. So, we want to afford them the benefit of the doubt, like you said. And if it's right on time there, give them the timeout. It takes away one of the 3 that they have, so it sort of benefits the opposing coach as well. And if the situation was reversed, he'd certainly want to get the timeout instead of the delay of game himself. So, nothing too big there, not really a penalty play, which is what we normally do here. But I just thought that this was one to think through how you're going to handle that situation, because this will happen. Maybe not every game, but these come up. I had it happen last week. Had it happen a few times throughout the season so far. As you know, Michael, that this happens in our games, high school or college.
Oh, as a line of scrimmage guy all the time. I mean, I'm not aware of the play clock. I try not to glance at it because you can get in trouble, right? You can forget your other duties as a line of scrimmage guy, but you do have that sense of, 30 seconds has gone by. But I'm always giving them a timeout.
Right.
The coach is going to be right there, and it's good game management. So
Absolutely. As Michael had mentioned, though, we're going to talk about changes of possession this week. Now, that could include both changes of possession on kicking plays as well as turnovers. As usual, we're going to start with high school. In high school, as we always do, we're going to talk about 5-person mechanics, as has been the case for all of our previous high school discussions. Now, we've discussed some mechanics in our earlier episodes. So as a quick reminder, some of those are that on a change of possession, we'll need the line of scrimmage officials to wait for the referee's signal before directing the line to game crew to move. So before we move the chains, we're going to wait for the referee to give us a signal to make sure we don't have to sort out any penalties or any other situations first. In addition, on a change of possession, we want to start the series on a whole yard line unless the spot is inside either 20-yard line. The 20 here is what we're looking for on the change of possession. So if we have a fumble that's recovered on the 13.5-yard line, that next series for B, when they take over and become A, they're going to start on the 13.5-yard line there. Now, L or H, depending on which team gains possession here, L or H should get the appropriate ball into play. There's no need to keep the old ball at the dead ball spot until the new ball is in play, unless the ball is going over on downs. Again, because precision is going to matter there. The covering official simply announces the dead ball spot to the umpire, who places the new ball there. If the ball goes over because the line to gain has not been made after 4th down, we want to keep the old ball in the field until the new ball can be brought in and they're switched out. R should be alert for action against the quarterback on changes of possession. He's a target. This is an emphasis that we have. Although the referee's also going to have to get back to the goal line, he needs to keep an eye there on the quarterback. We'll also need for all officials to give the stop clock signal twice on a change of possession. Michael, do you want to talk about what we would do during a return on a change of possession?
Yeah, sure. You kind of alluded to it earlier there with the referee, especially at the college level, right? They're focused on the quarterback, and at the high school level, we do have less eyes in the field, but that's important to keep that eye on that quarterback. That cheap shot, we're trying to get away from that in our games. And again, you alluded to the referee does have that goal line responsibility, so it's just keeping your head on a swivel and being able to move. Your umpire and back judge are going to be kind of cleaning up action as the play develops, and any sort of fumble play like we've been talking about so far, somebody needs to have a bead mag down, like we talked about in previous episodes. At that point, once the fumble's recovered, both your short wings are going to treat it like any other running play. In the high school world, you're going to let that play develop, and it's kind of hard, but you're going to stand still, feet in concrete, you might have heard, and let that action kind of get ahead of you, and then just trail the play like you would on any traditional scrimmage running play. Every official needs to be mindful of legal blocks, especially if you're backside. So if you're the backside short wing or the umpire or the back judge, we're talking about no blocking below the waist. We talked about that in our last episode. Or the blindside block, right? Anytime you get that momentum going one way and the field play starts to go the other way, watch out for those players looking again for that cheap shot or that blindside block. So, technically speaking, a fumble and interception are kind of like long punt returns. So there's a lot that kind of carries over in terms of just player movement, mass of bodies. And then, of course, a block PAT is a dead ball, but a blocked field goal could be returned if we had. And I think we've had some of those in our games, Ryan, in our high school games. So
yeah, we've had the blocked field goal. Yeah, we had a blocked PAT, but of course, I think all five of us. Well, I don't know if the umpire I don't know if Drew had his whistle in his mouth, but we had at least 4 whistles on it. So
there we go.
So we got that mechanic right. But yeah, I think it's important to emphasize again. These, whether it's a long kickoff return, a punt return, interception, fumble, well, as you'd said, at some point they all get treated the same, right? For us as H&L, we're going to try to maintain that little cushion, try to trail closely. The referee on the fumble and interception, and the blocked field goals, not blocked PAT in high school, right. Blocked field goal. Blocked field goal is going to have to get back to the goal line. And hopefully we'll get some help watching that quarterback or kicker from bad action. And here, it's the same in high school and college, right? It's long. I don't know the right term for it. Maybe this would be considered a slow developing play. But as you said, it's those plays where there's a lot of space where you generally see the blindside block, right? You see the proverbial guy coming with the brick in his hand, right? He's there's a defender trying to make a play, and there's a guy coming in an angle. If people have blind spots like we think of for drivers, it's the same idea on the football field. Pursuing defender in this situation has a blind spot, and you see somebody running full speed at an angle towards them. There's a reason for that. So we want to make sure that we see if there's a block that occurs there. Are the hands out in front, or is it forcible contact? Is it a foul? But these are the ones where we really have to have our antennae up for some illegal action there.
That's a great point, Ryan, is we talk about plays developing slowly, and a lot of times you mentioned it's a deep pass, right? If it's a fumble right in the middle of the field and there's a pile, what we're talking about today may not necessarily apply.
Right.
You might have to watch some dead ball action, but it's the spacing. You have all 22 players. Right. So, and you mentioned foul. Do we want to jump into some fouls and talk about what we're doing there?
Yeah. So for this episode, we're sort of synthesizing a lot of concepts here to cover the change of possession. So generally in terms of penalty enforcement, we want to think through what happens. And if we do have a change of possession, it's critical to know when the fouls happened, right? We need to know, is the foul before the change of possession? Did B gain possession after the turnover or fumble or block or whatever it is? When was possession gained? When did the foul occur? Was it before or after? So applying the rules of how we enforce penalties for high school, of course, it's a double foul if we have both teams that commit a foul that's other than a non-player foul or an unsportsmanlike conduct foul during the same live ball period in which either one, there's no change of team possession, unless all fouls committed by R are PSK fouls. Or 2, there's a change of team possession, and the team in possession at the end of the down fouls prior to the final change of possession, unless all fouls committed by R are PSK fouls. Or 3, there's a change of team possession, and the team in final possession accepts the penalty for its opponent's foul at any time during the down. And for all 3 of these, the penalties then would cancel and the down would be replayed. And of course, when I say PSK, what I mean there is post-scrimmage kick fouls.
I could do a whole episode on PSK. Maybe that's for another day.
Sounds like a future episode. But if both teams foul during a down in which there is a change of team possession and the play does not have a post-scrimmage kick foul, the team last gaining possession may retain the ball provided that the foul by that team is not prior to the final change of possession and the team last gaining possession declines the penalty for its opponent's fouls, other than a non-player or an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. In that case, the team that was not last in possession has no penalty options until the team last in possession has made its penalty decision on the fouls prior to the change of possession. Once that team decides, the team not last in possession may decline or accept the penalty by the team last in possession or choose which foul to have enforced in the case that the team last in possession committed more than one foul following the change. That's a lot of verbiage there. Essentially, what we're going to get to here is the concept of clean hands, right? Clean hands means that if I'm Team B and I intercept it, I pick up the ball, a loose ball on the ground following a fumble. We talked about PSK, so return team. When does the foul happen? If the foul happens after that change of possession occurs, then the team that gains possession, Team B, can keep the ball. And whatever penalties it may have picked up during the return, those will be enforced, but it retains possession of the ball. Right. So that's why we emphasize knowing when the foul occurred. Was it before or after the change of possession? Did they have possession when it occurred? Because if they foul before they gain possession, they're not keeping the ball.
Correct.
A will never decline that foul because they're going to want to gain possession, simply enough. But if B gains possession cleanly, clean hands, they've not committed a foul before they gain possession of the ball. If during the return they have a hold, a block below the waist, face mask, block in the back. Once the ball's blown dead, they have a few UNSs, some other stuff going on. They're going to keep the ball. Now it's going to get pushed back a pretty decent distance. But, just because they commit 8 or 9 fouls on the return, they're not giving up possession at that point. They're going to keep the ball. It's just any penalties against them after they've gained possession with clean hands will be enforced from the end of the run or the spot. We're going to talk about basic spots there, but that's going to be that's another episode in and of itself. So
yes, it can be a lot of bookmarks in this one.
Yeah, a lot of bookmarks. Hopefully, these are concepts that aren't completely foreign to everyone listening, or if you're a newer official, they're important things to know, and we'll cover them as we go forward. But again, the basic idea: if you're out on the field with people you don't normally work with or haven't worked with before, and you have a foul and there was a change of possession, they're going to ask you, did they get it with clean hands? That's going to be asked. If you know the person or not, that's going to be the question. You need to know when they gained possession and when did the foul occur. Now, if both teams foul during a down when there's a change of possession and all the receiving team's fouls are post-scrimmage kick fouls, the receiving team may retain the ball as long as it declines the penalties for the kicking team's fouls, other than a non-player or an unsportsmanlike conduct foul by the kicking team. Once that team decides, the team that's not last in possession can decline or accept the penalty by the team last in possession or choose which foul to have enforced in the case that the team last in possession committed more than one foul following the change. So again, same idea on a kick here. Again, post-scrimmage kick fouls, that would be on a punt, or I suppose you could have PSK on a field goal that's returned. So we're talking about scrimmage kicks, not free kicks. So not on a kickoff, but scrimmage kicks. So again, punt or field goal that might be returned. If K and R foul, and all of R's fouls would be post-scrimmage kick fouls, R can retain the ball provided it declines any fouls against the kicking team, and then any fouls it occurs that K accepts, whichever foul or fouls, depending on what they were, those can be enforced with the receiving team retaining the ball. So here, you might want to go to the NFHS rule manual and check out rules 10.2-1, 2, and 3 to have some overview of that portion of this as well.
And that would be something like, the punt team is in an illegal formation, and during the kick, our holds or something like that, right? That would be a real quick example of what this rule is trying to discuss.
Right. And then in that situation, the receiving team could determine, depending on the result of the kick, right, and the result of the return, if it's a favorable return that even with the penalty enforced is going to be a pretty good result for them, they might decline that illegal formation and take the result of the kick. But if they end up with bad field position or some other negative situation, then that might be a likely scenario where they'll want to enforce that penalty against the kicking team, have them re-kick, and hope for a better result there. That's an overview of the high school situation in terms of change of possession, who retains the ball, and how we enforce penalties. What are we doing in college with changes of possession, Michael?
It's very similar to high school. On any sort of change of possession, your headline judge should wait for any sort of signal from the referee before we move that chain crew. And that's something I just want to put a brief insert here. Have a good pregame with your chain crew. Always instruct them when to move. If they've done it for 5 years or 20 years, just make sure you're all on the same page. Last thing you need is your chain crew to move, and you don't know where they came from. So, again, if we're starting a new new series after a change of possession, we're going to start on the yard line. A lot of schools now have nice turf fields, and we want to take advantage of those yard lines because they're there and they're neat and they're painted. But if we're inside the 20-yard line, again, like Ryan talked about, we're inside the 10 or the 5, we're going to make note of that. And if we use a half-yard line, that's a good place to use it. So the wing official on the press box side in this case is going to get a ball in play. So that's a difference between ball mechanics in high school and college. So your press box side has all your ball changes. Probably another episode on ball mechanics we could do. We're tagging them all tonight.
We start making notes as we go along.
If you want to be part of the Learn Your Stripes podcast and take notes and be an assistant producer, we can't pay you, but we'd be happy to have you part of the team. Again, we're going to get that new ball in. And again, like we talked about, there's no need to hold that spot. We can just bring it in. Unless, again, it is on a 4th down and we're going to have that shorter line to gain there. We're going to keep that there for the exact measurement. It's precise measurement. Again, the referee in this case is going to be alert for any action that happens on the QB during change of possession. There are rules that come into play with the quarterback there. And all officials should give the stop the clock signal twice and every time we change a possession. And again, that's that overhead signal. A lot of times I forget we got to remember to slow things down. So stop the clock is just over the head with your hands 2 times. But of note, 7-person mechanics have a few important differences from high school. And I think Ryan and I are going to go through those here.
Yeah, as compared to 5-person mechanics, obviously in 7 we have 2 additional sideline officials. That leads to different responsibilities if we have a return of an interception, fumble, field goal, or try. And again, as emphasized earlier, tries that remain in the field of play can be returned here. If it bounces behind the line of scrimmage, then either A or B can recover it and advance it. If it goes beyond but doesn't hit in the end zone, then B can advance. But it's a different game. It's something to be mindful of if you're working Friday night and Saturday afternoon, that a blocked try is very different in high school versus college. And that's just, that's how the rules work, right? Once a return is underway, the short wings have to get ahead of the play as they have goal line responsibility. That's a big difference from high school because, as Michael said, we try to trail the play in high school. We try to retain a 5 to 10 yard cushion, trailing the play if we have a return in high school. But in college, on a change of possession, the short wings have to immediately start thinking to get to the goal line. The deep wings here would get the spot unless the return ends almost immediately, in which case the short wings might take the spot.
And that's a very Oh, go ahead, Ryan. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, so for me, because I'm essentially always line of scrimmage, it's very different for these on Friday night versus Saturday, whereas
Exactly.
since Michael works deep wing in college, he's getting the spot generally for these, unless it's, I have interceptions where they'll get it and then fall immediately, like right at my feet. So that's one where I might take the spot, and then I'll apologize to my deep wing just for saying, look, it happened at my feet. I took the spot. So.
Absolutely, and it's weird to know as a short wing there you have that interception, and it's weird to bail and just go,
right.
And that takes some getting used to, and I still forget. So luckily, being a deep wing, I still get to trail the play like I would trail the play on a Friday night. So I'm always used to trailing the play, so it's kind of fun that way.
Right. It's a different mindset. So the two things that I'm always thinking if I see an interception or a fumble that's scooped, or like you said, a scrimmage kick that's blocked and returned. Number one, get to the goal line. Number two, no low blocks.
No low blocks. Yep, absolutely.
So two things that go through my head whenever I see those. As with high school, the referee has to get to the goal line, but has to watch for personal fouls committed against the quarterback. So again, I know it sounds somewhat contradictory because we need the referee to get out ahead of the play, but we also have to watch for fouls against the quarterback. So again, with 7 officials on the field, with 3 really trying to hoof it to the goal line, hopefully somebody in the middle of the field, the back judge, the umpire, can lend some extra eyes to action against the quarterback or any other dirty play that takes place there. As with high school, we need all officials to be aware of potential blindside blocks and blocks below the waist. As I mentioned just a moment ago, and as Michael and I discussed, no blocks below the waist are permitted on returns. It's fairly simple. We talked last week about blocks below the waist, how they're legal in college. If there's a return, no low blocks. Very easy, very simple. If you see it, it's a flag. Now, make sure you have the right team, the right number, and the right spot. That adds some complexity there. But
I've been there. You see a block and you go, "Oh, hey," and then you have the teams mixed up. So yeah, I've done that.
But just knowing that it's illegal, that's the first step.
Right.
As we mentioned, a block try can be returned, but if it's blocked behind the line of scrimmage, A can recover and advance it. Therefore, until B recovers and begins a return that's taking us the other way, then we need the line of scrimmage officials to hold their spot at the place of the kick, which is usually going to be the 3 unless it's been moved by a penalty. And I've had this happen recently. You really get happy feet as that ball's moving around and you're trying to see who's recovering it. Need to hold for the 3 because depending on what happens, you may have to rule on the goal line. You may be the only person in position to do so. You're going to have to rule on the pylon. If it's a block try, there's just not time for the back judge and field judge to get out to the pylon. So the line of scrimmage officials are going to have to be responsible for that. So a lot going on there, but until B picks it up and is taking off the other way, we have to hold that line of scrimmage. Finally, we also have to be aware if we have an interception, a fumble, a punt return of the momentum rule, right? So that's Rule 8-5-1A, the exception. So we wouldn't have a safety if a player between their own team's 5-yard line and goal line either intercepts a pass or a fumble, or recovers an opponent's fumble or backward pass, or catches or recovers a kick, and the player's original momentum carries that player into their own end zone. The ball remains behind that team's goal line is declared dead in that team's possession there. That would include a fumble that goes from the end zone into the field of play and out of bounds. If those conditions are satisfied, the ball belongs to that player's team at the spot where that player gained possession. So this is going to be an important situation if we see an interception near the goal line. That fumble that's intercepted, by intercepting a fumble, of course, we mean if the ball is loose in the air, the player recovers it, not necessarily a pass interception.
Right. We're really trying to prevent that cheap safety from taking place, right? That's what we're trying to stop.
Or if we have a catch or a kick that's recovered near the goal line, we really have to get a beanbag down, knowing where that interception, fumble recovery, kick was caught, because if that player drifts back into the end zone and the momentum rule applies, we're not going to have a safety committed here. We're going to give them the ball where it was recovered in the field of play. But the only way to really remember that is to make sure we're marking that as that's all starting there. So again, Rule 8-5-1A, that's the exception. That's the momentum rule. Something for us to be mindful of on changes of possession that occur near the goal line. We talked a little while ago about how we treat fouls in high school during a change of possession. What do we do in college, Michael?
So if we have fouls during a try before any change of team possession, we have either offsetting fouls, fouls by B, or fouls by A. So we'll look at those three categories. So if we have offsetting fouls and both teams foul before the change of possession, we're just going to offset. We'll repeat the down. Even if any additional fouls occur after the possession, we'll repeat the down if the offsetting and any repeat of the down must be from the previous spot. So now if we have fouls by Team B on a try, if there's a successful try by Team A, they have the option of declining the score, repeating the try after the enforcement, or declining the penalties and accepting the score. They have the option to accept the score with penalties for personal fouls and unsportsmanlike conduct fouls, because those can be enforced on the succeeding kickoff or the spot in extra periods. Also, they can repeat the down after a penalty against Team B. It may be from any point on or between the hash marks, just something to be aware of and talk about with your umpire. Any foul by Team A on a try after the foul on a successful try, the ball can be put in play at the spot where the penalty leaves it. And that's in Rule 8 under scoring, FR 87. A little bit more detail there. If Team A commits a foul for the penalty includes a loss of down, the try's over, and any score is canceled. There's no yardage penalty at that point. That's going to be on the kickoff. We're just going to say, hey, that didn't happen. We'll cancel it, and we'll move on. Now, if before a change of team possession, Team A commits a foul that's not offset, and during the down we don't have another change of possession, so kind of an ABA scenario, that penalty is just declined by rule. Now, lastly, we've got dead ball enforcement, so penalties for fouls that occur after the ball is ready for play, but before the next snap, or penalties that for live ball fouls treated as dead ball fouls occurring during the down are enforced on the succeeding kickoff or from the succeeding spot in extra periods. If the try is replayed, these penalties are enforced on the replay of that down. So next, let's jump into fouls during a try after a change of team possession. So we talked about before, now we'll go after. So penalties against either team are declined by rule. And there's a brief exception in Rule 835 that talks about flagrant fouls and sportsmanlike conduct fouls, dead ball personal fouls, and of course our favorite live ball fouls treated as dead ball fouls. A score by a team committing a foul during the down is canceled. If both teams foul during the down and Team B has not fouled before the change of possession, the fouls cancel, the down's not repeated, and the try is over. Again, we'll see our exception here in 835. Again, that talks about our penalties for flagrant fouls, unsportsmanlike fouls, dead ball fouls, and live ball is dead ball. Now, Ryan, I don't know if you heard, I'm going to take a break here because that's a mouthful. I've always heard the term fuddle.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of that? And I can't for the life of me ever remember. I know the acronym fuddle, but I can't remember what each one stands for. So if somebody out there has a good acronym, let us know.
Yeah, I was actually going to try to interject when I could because I heard that for the first time this season, and it helps me to remember these now. So your flagrant personal fouls, your unsportsmanlike conduct fouls, dead ball personal fouls, and the live ball is treated as dead ball fouls. I don't know that it's necessarily the cleanest way, but fuddle, it sounds like huddle, which
sure. There's huddles in football. Yeah, sure.
I'm making a 6-year-old rhyming analogy there, but it helps me to remember it. But yeah, fuddle helps me to remember these as best that I can. In terms of what the exceptions are here. And there's a few other areas throughout the rule book where fuddle comes into play and we have to be mindful of. So it's a good thing to commit to memory when we're thinking of penalties and what we're enforcing and potentially carrying over.
And that's the key there is these categories we're talking about: flagrant, unsportsmanlike conduct, dead ball, and live ball, dead ball. It's just where they come into play with these exceptions and right. how they're enforced.
Right. I mean, what you might think of, these are all going to be 15-yard type of fouls, right? These are your big ones. These are major fouls. So even if you don't remember fuddle, you can exclude something like a I don't know, illegal shift,
Yeah, there you go.
A hold. Things that aren't big, either sporting type of issues or safety fouls. Those are going to be, those don't fall under the category. And that's sort of the differentiation there.
Now, last thing we'll cover real quick too in this section again, we're in 833, 834, 835. We're all through there. A couple of exceptions we want to talk about on fouls during a try after a change of team possession. When there's the first exception is if there's a change of team possession during a down and the team last getting possession had not fouled before getting possession. This goes back to our clean hands philosophy. It can refuse the offsetting fouls and retain possession after completion of the penalty for its foul. So again, if we have multiple fouls, one by each team, they can choose the option as to what to do if they had that ball with clean hands. The second exception is when all Team B fouls that occur before the possession are governed by PSK rules. Team B can refuse the offsetting fouls and accept the post-scrimmage kick enforcement. And then our last third exception, we got to dive a little deeper into the rule book, and I'll outline them here: 834C and 313G during a try or extra period after Team B's possession. So a little homework there.
Yeah, basically the thing that we want to keep in mind, once again, it's the concept of clean hands, right? The basic concept of a change of possession is that if Team B commits a foul prior to gaining possession, it's not going to retain the ball. If B's foul occurs after the change of team possession, it's considered to have gained possession with clean hands and can retain the ball following enforcement of its fouls. As mentioned earlier, this episode, we're sort of synthesizing a number of different situations and concepts. So I understand we're sort of bouncing back and forth through different rules and mechanics. But we want to discuss a few examples here to try to put this into practice, because again, I know us talking at you about this can be a bit cumbersome or a bit difficult to process. And so, as with everything else, some examples always help. So I'm going to have Michael take over for that.
Yeah, so our first example here, fairly straightforward. B34 recovers Team A's fumble, returns the ball for 20 yards before being tackled by A73, who twists B34's face mask. B29 clips B30 during B34's run. So in this case, we had a fumble. Team B recovered, and TB can decline the offsetting fouls to keep the football, and the penalty for its clipping foul will be enforced. So again, Team B in this case did take the ball with clean hands. We then had a face mask foul by Team A after the change of possession, and then we had a foul by B again after the change of possession. Fairly straightforward. That might be one of the easier examples. So, Ryan, anything you want to add on that?
No, that's a fairly simple one. I think it's simple to think about while we're sitting here and talking about it. When all that takes place on the field, it's a bit more complex. But that's one of those where you just need to know what happened when, who did what, so that you can walk through it and get to the right result there.
So our second one is B65 is in the neutral zone at the snap. So this one's a little more specific to college. Obviously, if we have a player in the neutral zone in high school, we're going to shut that play down. So we wouldn't have this issue there. But in the college setting, if we have B65 in the neutral zone at the snap, and then B29 intercepts A12's pass, and on the return, A45 tackles B29 by grabbing and twisting the face mask. So in this case, we can't say that we had the ball with clean hands because we did have a foul at the snap, and that was the neutral zone infraction there. So we do have offsetting fouls. Team B, the last team in possession, fouled, so there's no option for them to keep the ball. So we're going to have to offset, and we'll replay the down. But again, if we translate that play back to high school here, let's say we didn't have the neutral zone infraction, and we had the interception, and then a simple tackle by the face mask. B obviously does get to keep that ball because they, again, obtain the ball with clean hands, and then we're going to enforce the foul in that case from the end of the run.
Correct. Obviously, in high school, if we had a neutral zone infraction, we'd shut it down, and none of this would be allowed to take place.
Right. It wouldn't happen in the first place. All right, we'll do one more for tonight here. Or today, whenever you're listening to this podcast, morning, noon, or night, right? 5 players, again, we've got 5 players in the backfield. Team A punts on 4th down. B35 returns the punt to the B40 and is driven out of bounds. During the return, B29 clips at the B38. So Team B in this case may decline the offsetting fouls and retain possession. Team A will accept the clipping penalty. So again, this is very similar to our first example we had. This will leave the ball to B23. Team B will have first and 10 from their own 23-yard line. So just a few things to think about there with some of those different enforcements there when it comes to that change of possession. So obviously the scrimmage kick, the punt, that can get interesting with the timing. The ball could be still in the air when we have the foul. We just need to know whether that foul is going to be on the kick or on the return, because like we talked about, that will affect our post-scrimmage kick rules. And the same could happen for a free kick. We didn't talk a lot about free kicks tonight too. You could have a foul during a kick on a free kick, I suppose. It's not as likely, so I think more often than not you'd have one on the return. But just some things to think about when timing of relation to the foul and to when possession happened. That's kind of our key theme of tonight.
Sure. And one of our future episodes, as we said, will be basic spots, and free kicks will be different in terms of the basic spot on a free kick would be the previous spot, so the spot from where it was kicked. So we'll get into all of that when we get there, but just some things to keep in mind for now. Whether you have a scrimmage kick, a free kick, an interception, or a fumble, and you have a foul, just be mindful who committed the foul, where, and when, in relation to the change of possession. When did that foul occur, before or after? Again, I understand these are some difficult concepts. I hope that we've done a useful job for you of synthesizing these. As we go forward, a lot of the concepts that we've discussed, post-scrimmage kick enforcement, basic spots, and more, will drill down further. So this may be an episode to return to as well as we get to more and more of those concepts in the future. But we appreciate you joining us once again for this episode of Learn Your Stripes. Our episode next week will be our last episode before Thanksgiving. So our topic will be religion and politics to get you ready for your Thanksgiving method with your family. Michael, could you imagine tuning into this and hearing two idiots like us talking about anything that's having to do with real life?
Good Lord. We'd bumble worse about that than we do about football.
Before we... So if anybody's unsubscribing at this point, I assure you we will not be discussing religion or politics next week.
I don't have time for it.
It will be something with football rules, perhaps one of the topics we discussed tonight earlier here, but we will make sure that it's hopefully another useful discussion for you. Before that, though, as always, we'll leave you with a play to consider.
Okay, 2nd and 10 for A from the B47. 2:43 to go in the second quarter. Play clock is running, or game clock is running, rather. Yes, play clock is too, but game clock and play clock are running. B32 intercepts A10's forward pass, returns it to the A25. Prior to the interception, B95 is flagged for roughing the passer. So again, another example we're talking about of fouls and change of possession. So who will be next to put the ball in play? What is our down and distance? What is our game clock status, our play clock status? And again, do we have any differences for high school and college?
We'll discuss that play at the start of the next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, or if you have any questions or feel we made a mistake, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. As always, you can find episodes or obtain an RSS link to directly download all episodes into your podcast app of choice at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast and on Twitter at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate us 5 stars and leave a review on your app of choice. We'll see you back here next week. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.